So good to see everyone bright and early again. I'm really fascinated that y'all do these meetings so early and are always so smiley and cheerful every time I come in. So we appreciate you being here today. We're excited. Did everyone get their iPad distributed? I see them out. No, if it's missing, we'll get you one. Don't worry. Nadine and her team are amazing, so we'll make sure. So we're really excited about this process and letting you guys, today we're going to learn more and kind of that next step of how you can implement your iPads within the classroom. Last week you had the list of free apps you can go on, and now you should be able to go on any CMCSS approved app. You can go on and download for as long as it's a free app. And then we have those paid apps coming later in the next couple of months for you guys to have on your iPad. So our agenda today is obviously distribution of iPads, which it all seems to have gotten that. We're going to review. We're just going to learn the initial steps to the SETT framework, which in AT is how we kind of decide what equipment will best suit our students. So we're really excited for you to have an idea on how that framework works. And then we will review with some of you guys the IEP documentation. I think Sarah and I discussed only certain members doing that it's applicable to. Again, this is through the Assistive Technology Department, and last time we were here, we talked about some key universal features, so I just wanted to highlight those again and talk about, I'm not going to spend time on those, but if you need any help or assistance finding those, you can go back to the previous slides, and there were instructions that Chris provided on those, but definitely use those in your practice throughout the day, the school day. So the big, I guess, umbrella of what we're talking about today is creating a universal design for learning. And we could honestly talk about this all day if I wanted to. But this is kind of what our goal in CMCSS in our AT department is to help you guys set up your classrooms as universal designs for learning. So what that means is instead of looking at it as individual accommodations for your students, you're going to, and using a very reactive process in teaching, instead we are going to create a universal design. So it's a proactive process to make sure we are pulling in all areas, making it accessible for all students. The way I look at it is if you're on this proactive approach to using universal design, you're thinking ahead of time in your lesson planning on how you can make this accessible for all students on the front end, so that when you have these students that need specific accommodations, on the back end, you're not having to modify the work. An example of this is providing in a CDC classroom, for example, you could provide 3 different types of worksheets every time to your students. You may have a video playing of the lesson, so you have that visual, and then when they have their work to do, you have written text-based worksheet. The next one may be more symbol and text combined, and then the last one could be all symbols, and you're providing those 3 worksheets to the student and letting them choose which one they want to do. Sometimes a student may want to challenge themselves by doing the text-based one. If you have someone that struggles with reading, they may benefit from symbols combined with text to help them learn. But on the front end, if you provide that, you're not having to modify every worksheet for your students with reading disabilities or things like that. So that's kind of what UDL teaches. So I'm going to fly through the scenarios just for this purpose because I really want to make sure we get to the SETT framework. But go back when you have on your own time and read those scenarios, and it just talks about how you can set up your classroom in a universally designed way. I feel like in preschool we do this a lot of times because we're very much like visuals on the wall, but you think about it also as using your FM system so that your voice is projected for all your students, and that would help with children with hearing impairments. Making sure you're incorporating visuals into your lesson so that if you have a visual learner that needs more symbol based over verbal, that they're getting that access. It's thinking along those lines. Maybe dynamic seating because you have some kids that are wiggling. Like, are you providing those sensory supports throughout your lesson as needed? And now we're going to get into the SETT framework. So really what the SETT framework has us do is it has us stop that passive participation within the classroom and think about how we need to collaborate as a team and develop a plan for a student. What can we find to help that student access their curriculum more effectively? And it was created by Dr. Joy Zabala, and she is a special educator, and it's a tool called the SETT Framework, and it's an acronym that stands for Students, Environment, Tasks, and Tools. And it looks at a student with complex needs and teaches us how we can find AT to avoid abandonment and underutilization of the equipment. So making sure we're fitting them with the right equipment so it doesn't end up getting abandoned, and making sure that we are analyzing the environment to determine what the best AT supports can be. So now that you have these iPads, we're going to kind of look and think about on a daily basis the SETT framework on how we can analyze our environment and look at our environment to meet the needs of our students. So this is a very detailed graph, but it just kind of asks the questions for each area of the SETT framework. So we have the student. So what is our area of concern? What do we need the student to be able to do that they're struggling with, okay? So when you're thinking of your iPads and how you could use it within the classroom, you can think of, is there an area of concern for my student? And what current abilities are they struggling with? And then we look at our environment. So what's the arrangement for instructional and physical and support for the student and staff? We're looking at the materials being used. Are there any access issues? Like, can they direct select on the iPad, or maybe they need something more modified to access, like an adaptive stylus. We have kids with eye gaze, all of that. And I love the environment at the very end where it says the attitude and expectations of staff, family, and others, because that is something we definitely want to look at, right? Are we going to have buy-in from the parent with this? Do we maybe need to have some trainings to help them, have a different attitude towards the AT? And then tasks. What specific tasks occur in the student's natural environments that enable progress towards master of IEP goals and objectives? And then the biggest thing for us is that tool component. So this can include any devices, services, and strategies, anything that's needed to help the student succeed, right? We know that you can't just put assistive technology in a student's hand and it magically works, right? There's a lot of components that go into making it successful. So whether that be, one of the things I really want you to think about is utilizing your teams to help support you guys in this assistive technology realm. So please reach out if you feel like you're having difficulty finding the correct tool for that student, or maybe you found the tool and it just doesn't seem to be working and you need more training on it, how to align it with your academic goals and things like that. So please reach out to our team, Chris's team, that we're here to help you guys with that. We often come in and do parent trainings, so that I know that's a big thing to take on for a teacher. You already have so many things you're doing throughout the day. So if they need training on something that we're going to implement in the school and maybe allow them to have it at home as well, that's when we could come in and help train the parent. But this is kind of what we're looking at. The key elements is that it's really useful in all phases of using AT. So from beginning, figuring out what you need, figuring out what the problem is, to implementation and training and the final parts. So you really want to try to revisit the set periodically to see if the information, see if anything has changed, see if you need to modify anything. And like I said, today we're kind of just like dipping our toe in the in the water of SETT. It goes very deep, but if you are one of those people that love to just look at research and look at it, there's the SETT chart. I love this because it's a blank chart kind of what we saw earlier, and you can use it for that student. You can write their name at the top, and as an IEP team or as a team, if they don't have an IEP and you want to use some universal access that you have in the district, you can go through and see, look at the student, look at their environment, look at the tasks you need them to complete, and then think about the tools you could use, okay? They have a whole website. They have tons of questions and tons of resources. I love the SETT scaffolding link because it literally goes through, here's low to high tech. Anytime you bring us in for AT, we should be asking you, what have you tried? What have we done so far? So did you try for a kid that has communication difficulties? Have we tried low-tech visuals? Have we tried implementing these visuals throughout the day, such as a PEX book, a visual schedule, first then? We're going to ask that first before we give them an iPad with a high-tech AAC app, okay? So here's just an example of some practice because I need to see it in play whenever I'm learning a new, I guess, theory or framework. So Marie is a preschool student, and she struggles with fine motor skills and communication due to her diagnosis of autism. I mean, do any of you have students that meet this criteria that sound familiar, right? Her teachers noticed that she has an inability to grip a pencil and communicate verbally, and it is hindering her performance in her pre-writing worksheets and assignments and functional communication. So we're going to use, the IEP team decides to use the SETT framework to identify if there's a need for high-tech assistive technology. So as a team, you would sit down and you would look at the student. So you're going to look at the challenges that student's having, the strengths that she has. So we know she has a diagnosis of autism. We know that that comes with some fine motor difficulties and communication difficulties. But she does have some strengths. And I always say, let's not focus on all the problems we're having. Our strengths can tell us so much about this student if we're looking at it. So for her strengths are she has a strong receptive vocabulary. So she understands a lot more than she's able to communicate. She loves numbers, letters, and shapes, okay? And can point to things she wants, okay? If I read that as an AT coach, I'm thinking, okay, I can start in a higher grid size because she has a high vocabulary. I'm looking at, she could probably understand categories. So on an AAC app, she would probably understand that animals leads to, the animal folder leads to a list of animals, and that she would be able to tell me what animals what. So it gives me a lot of good information. She's pointing to things she wants. That tells me she can probably direct select on a tablet. But also she's understanding that communication interaction, right? She understands that her actions equal power, right? She can point and get what she wants. That is like the first step in communication, and we love that. But some challenges. She is having difficulty with tracing. She's having difficulty communicating. It's causing a lot of frustration within the classroom, equaling some negative behaviors, okay? And slower completion of tasks. Probably at this age in preschool, we have a lot of avoidance and elopement because we can't do the work. It's too hard, right? Any of your kids just get up and walk away mid lesson? So maybe we should look at what content we're providing, right? You know, is it really their attention span, or is it we're asking them to do something that they can't do? So the environment. So she is in an inclusive preschool classroom. So she has some peer models, which tells me this is great. I love a good peer model, because whenever I get high-tech equipment out, what happens first in the classroom with me is all those peer models come and push it. And then I had a student that they were saying, well, in one-to-one speech therapy, they were never using the device, and they were like, they're just not motivated. I can't find anything they like. I took it into their preschool classroom, sat on the floor with kids during center time. We're talking about the colors of cars, and I want the red car, I want the blue car, and all their friends get so excited and they're swarming around me, all the peers. And this kid's just kind of like in his own world. I tell you, the second his friends started pushing that, he was like, no, that's mine. And he comes over there and he starts saying, like, pushing kids away, red car. He's using it because his peers were using it, and it became like, no, that's my voice. I'll show you what I can do with it. And then the teacher is using a projector and some low-tech visuals around the classroom. And she has 2 EAs in the classroom to assist with her. So that immediately, I love that setup, right? Because I can help train those EAs to support the modeling process as that teacher is providing instruction. So this classroom is set up very well to start incorporating some high-tech AT, and they're already using visuals and projecting visual supports throughout their lessons. But there's limited time for individual assistance due to the class size. So that one-to-one small group is difficult for the teacher. Okay, so some tasks. They do some pre-writing worksheets, some tracing shapes, tracing letters. There's arts and crafts, and she's struggling. She doesn't really want to attend to the arts and crafts because she can't cut easily because of her fine motor skills. And just in general, we're having trouble communicating those daily wants and needs, right? And her inability to trace and cut causes frustration and avoidance with tasks. Her inability to verbally communicate limits her participation in the activities. And also just play, at this age, play and socializing is so important, and she's really limited in that. She understands a lot of what her peers are saying, but she can't say anything back. So how can we help with that? So tools. Obviously, I'm going to look at some low to mid-tech things first. I'm going to see what I can pull within that classroom to help that student immediately, okay? So that might look like adaptive scissors, okay? Maybe I'm going to reach out to OT, see if we have any adaptive scissors, reduce frustration. I'm going to look at adaptive pencils. Maybe I'm going to use a thicker, shorter pencil for her that's easier to grip. Or again, I'm going to reach out to my OT, see what supports we have. Maybe instead of tracing triangles and letters, I'm going to talk to my OT about where can we take it a step before that. What's pre-writing before we get to letters? Drawing lines down, making circles, drawing lines diagonal, across, you know, all the things you see them come in and probably do in therapy. So maybe I'm going to modify what tasks she has versus, you know, her peers. But then we're going to use some visuals. Maybe I have low communication boards throughout the classroom. So I have a visual of my centers, and I go to her and I say, Maria, what center do you want to pick today? And I give her a visual choice that she can point to, because we know she can point to tell us what she wants, right? So these are just some low tech tools you can use throughout your classroom to already set her up for success. But then we are going to consider a tablet with maybe a stylus. So things like an iPad, I'm going to consider apps like SnapType Pro. This is something that would go directly through the AT department. And you would need a referral, since this is a paid app that we would get through assistive technology. But it allows you to snap a picture of the worksheet, and they can draw like a whiteboard on the worksheet, or they can type if that's easier for them. Now, in pre-K, we're careful with that, right? We want to continue to work on the task. This isn't a fifth grader who's needing to complete essays and needs it to be efficient. We still want to work on writing with them. So we're really going to think of when it's effective, when we need to pull out the iPad and use something more high tech, maybe when it's a more lengthy task. But then we still want to work on those skills to develop it, right? We want to work on those pre-writing skills to scaffold to where we do get to writing eventually. But my biggest need right now is looking at her communication, and I feel like an AAC app could help increase communication. So I'm thinking of, we call it in assistive technology, we call it feature matching. Okay, so we have a lot of apps out there, and it can get overwhelming. I know it's overwhelming for speech therapists, so I know it's overwhelming for teachers when I think of like, what app do I need best for my student? But I'm going to think of some key features. What if instead of needing two different apps that I float between, is there an AAC app that incorporates a whiteboard feature that has a keyboard with symbols that can kind of do all the things? And there is one. So I'm going to feature match to an app that has a keyboard and whiteboard feature. So outcome. After a trial period with multiple tools, so for instance, this trial period could mean, as you guys are going to get an AAC app, it could mean that you pulled in your AAC app on your tablet and trialed it throughout activities in your classroom, and you saw she was very responsive to that. And so that's when you reached out to the AT team and said, I trialed this. These are all the things I saw her do on it. I think she could really benefit from a designated device. So we trialed the app TD Snap Core. I'm going to show you a little bit on that today. And so this app utilizes a keyboard with symbols and predictive text that could help with spelling and writing in the future. So I'm not just thinking about today, I'm thinking about how this app can grow with this student, right? In case they need that. But immediately, the whiteboard feature is going to allow her to trace items with her finger or trace items with an adaptive stylist. So when she is frustrated with that worksheet, maybe I move into bringing in the iPad and she can trace lines down on the whiteboard. And she's completing a task, she's doing the work, we're just scaffolding it based on where she's at, okay? But then it also has the communication app within it to where she can communicate using an AAC, so she's no longer nonverbal. So this process kind of highlights how the SETT framework works. This is kind of what rules our entire evaluation process from assistive technology. And our hope is that as teachers, you guys utilize this SETT framework when you're thinking of, is it time to bring in AT? Is there things I can use with my iPad to work on a skill with a student? I know there's a lot of free pre-writing apps that OT is requested that we provide to you guys. So look on anything within your apps that look fun and game-like to the student, but it's really working on those pre-writing skills. Another thing that Sarah mentioned earlier was the yes/no app, incorporating with all your students in morning meeting, like, is it sunny? Yes or no? No, it's rainy. Yes, it's rainy today. Modeling that within the yes/no app. And that's great. It's a field of 2. It's nice and simplified for any student. So some of these free apps have a lot of options that you can utilize in your classroom already. And then that's going to see if these universal things aren't meeting that student's need, that's when you can reach out to AT and we can help take it to the next step. So that is our beginning information for the SETT framework. I was thinking, how much time do we have left? Okay, so I wanted us to do a little table talk in regards to Maria. So we kind of talked about, I want each of you, I'll stay here, but maybe like get on your iPads and talk amongst yourself on some of the apps that are available or features that are available within your iPad. Some of those apps we had listed in the previous training, and just talk amongst yourself at your tables on some ways you could support Maria in your classroom, knowing that she has a diagnosis of autism, knowing she struggles to communicate and participate in these academic tasks. Maybe there's some games that you could help target specific things. I know Chris gave us some examples last week with the PBS Kids games that were really great on aligning with IEP goals and just our standards in general. So talk amongst yourselves and kind of think about where you would go with your iPads and things like that. And I can also, I'm wondering too, I want to, as y'all talk, kind of go around and show the snap. So just to piggyback off of what Lori was talking about, this SETT framework that you're looking at up here is very detailed, right? And so remember, we are sticking our toe in the water. You have got a device in your hand that can feel overwhelming. What we need for you to be able to do is to walk out of here and look at one time during your day. Yes, sorry, I forgot. You could actually use this device, and perhaps it's with Maria or a child like Maria, or perhaps it is with everyone, thinking universal design for learning, right? Because what benefits Maria most likely is going to benefit the rest of the class, right? So think about that one time that you might be able to pull something and bring this iPad in to begin that. And really, so the SETT framework can be very simplistic thinking. The student, okay, I'm going to do calendar, the environment, we're all going to be seated on the carpet. The task, I'm going to ask about the weather, or I'm going to count on the calendar, and then think about this tool that you have and how you can begin to make that interactive with the students, right? You might have a grid up of the calendar that has numbers that when the student touches it, it talks. So then you have now provided a voice for kids that cannot vocalize on their own. Okay, does that make sense? So when you're at your table, you're going to think about it in terms of that. Very simplistic. You're going to take this device back into your classroom. What are you going to do with it? Okay?